Hi, my name is David Zeman, and today we're going to take a look at how we work with webhooks. So let's get started. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to look at what is a webhook. We're going to have a brief overview of how they're used and different scenarios they can be used in. What tools do we need to work with webhooks? We'll look at both in this demo and also in a real world situation. We're going to take a brief look at Pipedream as our testing server. Look at OAuth2, the authentication method that we use to connect to Sky API and to retrieve data from Blackbaud. We're not going to go into too much depth with this because it does assume we have some knowledge of it, but have a quick look at how we use it. We're going to subscribe to webhook. We're going to make a change, in this case in Razor's Edge. And we're going to see what happens next. We're going to see what that change does, and what data we retrieve from the webhook because of that change. So, warning: this presentation may become at certain points uncomfortable, at least uncomfortable for me. There are points in it when we're waiting for data to flow, to come through, for webhooks to arrive, and there might be occasional points where my heart beats a bit faster because I'm waiting and I'm hoping it will arrive. Don't be alarmed. All right, let's crack on. Let's do this webhook thing. So, what is a webhook and what is it used for? Well, let me just start by taking you through a scenario. Imagine you are wanting to buy something online. Let's look at, a shopping website. You might have heard of it, Amazon. You go to Amazon, and bear in mind here, I don't know the actual process that Amazon goes through when you go there. I'm just supposing this is how it works. So you go to Amazon and you make a search for an item. You see a whole list of items and response to your search. You select one of those items. You then decide, okay, I want to find out more information about it. Perhaps look at the price details, look at the reviews. And then once you've decided you want to go ahead and purchase, you add that to your cart and eventually you check out. Now, at no point along that process flow is Amazon any less in control. They can steer the way you work, steer the code flow to get you from searching to payment. But take the perspective of, say, a marketplace vendor. Say you're not buying directly from Amazon, you're buying from a third-party marketplace vendor on Amazon. Unless they check their inbox or check the website every 5 minutes, they won't know that something's come through, that you've decided to purchase their items. So what happens is they instead receive a notification. They receive a notification to perhaps their website where the data comes through and starts a procurement process or a delivery process. And that notification is, in essence, a webhook. So they consume that notification, they subscribe to it, and then they consume it. They fulfill your delivery of the product. So that's one scenario. Obviously, webhooks can be used in both large and small. Another scenario is a product we have, AuditTrail Cloud, which allows you to track the changes in Razor's Edge. So as soon as a change is made in Razor's Edge, it gets fired off to whoever wants to receive that notification, whoever the consumer is of that notification. So AuditTrail Cloud consumes notifications about changes to the Razor's Edge. But equally, it could be something small. It could be a small application. So say you develop your own application such that someone changes solicitor code to do not email. When you receive that application, or that notification rather, the webhook notification, you then send that off to your email marketing application to say unsubscribe the person from emails. So as you can see, there's lots of different uses, lots of different ways of using the application. Okay, let's look at what tools we need to use. So we're going to look at Pipedream as a server, and you need a server to be able to receive the notifications from the Sky API, from the webhook. And perhaps in a real-world scenario, you'd have an application that receives those notifications. So you receive the notifications, and then you do something with it. In our case, we're just going to examine the notification, examine the webhook to see what it contains and what we can do with it. You would also need a client to both subscribe to the webhooks and set those up, but also a client that would receive the notification. So that's the server, but also receive and process it. So we have our server, which receives it, but we also need something in the application or a process to be able to handle that data, to do something with it. There's no point in receiving it if we're not going to do anything with it at all. And then finally, it's something which we won't really see in this demonstration, we probably need a database also. We need a database to store some data, the incoming data, but also specifically for the OAuth 2 application to store the refresh token, so that we can refresh our access token to Sky API without having to go through the user interface and subscribe each time. So let's take a look at Pipedream. I'm going to bring that up now. Here, let's see. So this is our Pipedream application, and what we have here is we set up a server, we set up an endpoint, this one here that I highlighted, and that is the endpoint that the Sky API will send webhooks to. So we will set that up in a minute. Any changes made in Razor's Edge will come to that endpoint and be processed by or appear in Pipedream. One thing we just need to add is that we can't simply set up a Pipedream server without any further modification. It's not just, we can't just receive any kind of request. This is a webhook, it needs to be accessible for webhooks, and Blackbaud have specific requirements for webhooks. And in order to demonstrate that we can handle webhook data and we're authorized to do so, we have to send back a specific response. And we can see that response at the bottom here. So we've gone ahead and adapted our workflow, Pipedream workflow, so that anything that comes in, we send back this response. It's not strictly necessary for everything that comes back in, but it just works out easier in this case. So we're sending back the header, a webhook allowed origin, and with the value event grid Azure Net. And that will just tell Sky API that we are authorized, or we are able to receive webhook data. Okay, so OAuth 2. Let's have a look at Postman, which we're using as our client. And you can see here we have a number of endpoints that we're going to look at throughout the session. But in order to use those endpoints, we need to be able to authorize ourselves to retrieve data from Razor's Edge. And that means we need to go through the OAuth 2 authorization process. So what I've gone and done is set up that authorization process on the top level here on the Skills Lab. So we can see here we have this token, access token, which is attached to the header of each of these endpoints. And this is also centralized. We have the whole process is done for each of these endpoints, and we're going to go through that process now. So let's have a quick look. And by the way, this whole Postman connection is downloadable on my GitHub repo, which should be available, which is available to you now, and the link you should see on the email that you got received for this session. And then one of the things you have to do when you go use that connection is to change these variables here. So I'm using variables. You can see for client ID, client secret, and the callback URL. I'm using variables to just standard placeholders, and you set those variables here. So I'm going to go ahead and get a new access token, because my previous one probably will have expired. Let's just have a quick look actually. If we manage these tokens, it hasn't expired, it will do soon. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to delete this and get a new one. So let's get a new access token. And when you do this, we've already logged into Blackbaud with our Blackbaud ID. When you come to do this, you'll need to log in. And what this is essentially saying is that our application that we set up on the Blackbaud developer site, DZ's Webhook Skills Lab, would like to access your Razor's Edge data, or in this case, my Razor's Edge data, from Zeem Development. That's the environment. Now I'm going to go ahead and press authorize. If I didn't do that, it'd be a very short demo and somewhat not uninteresting. So authorize, and that then will authorize the flow, authorize the process, and retrieve then an access token, which we see here now. This very long string here is an access token, which is automatically attached to our header. when we make calls to Sky API. Along with the access token, we also get some other items here. This tells us that it expires in this time here, and then we also get the refresh token, which I said. So ideally, in a real-world situation, you would save this refresh token, and you would store it in a database, so that you wouldn't have to go through this UI-based retrieval of an access token. You would just refresh the existing one and get a new access token for use, and all that's done behind the scenes programmatically. We have the environment ID, we have the environment name, we have my name, my details here. So we're going to go ahead and use this token, and that then associates this token with our calls for this collection of data. Right, let's subscribe to a webhook. So I have this endpoint here, and what I've gone and done is I've got the URL here, which is a post to subscriptions. We have our body consists of the webhook URL, which is again it's a variable pipe dream URL, which is what we saw earlier. Is this URL here? So that's in our variables. Let's go back to Postman, and then the event type, which in this case we are going to subscribe to the constituent address change event type. So if I now send that off to Sky API, so it comes back with a status 200, meaning it's successful, thankfully. It gives us an ID and it also tells us the status, which is provisioning. Now that will carry on for a minute or two provisioning, and will, of course, eventually be provisioned. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the webhook subscriptions that we have available to us. Now, before this started, I cleared them all out, so there won't be any other than that one in particular. So if I run that, we'll see that we're getting the subscription from the same endpoint, but this time it's a get. And this retrieves all the subscriptions for our application, for our environment, the Rails Edge environment, but specifically for our application, not for any other application that might have webhooks on your environment. So again, this is telling us information about those webhooks that are available to us. Gives us the environment ID, tells us the webhook URL, which again that matches the URL in our Pipedream server. Tells us again this is the event type, constituent address change, and the status, which is still provisioning. Now if I try that again, hopefully, yep, it's changed to provisioned, meaning that it's ready for use. Okay then, let's in that case, let's go ahead and make a change. So we're going to go to Rails Edge, and we will search for just a random person. Let's try and select someone who I can pronounce. Let's try Abigail. It's a pretty easy name. Okay, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and make a change to her address. So let's make a change to this one. So if we change this to something very obvious, we know it's been changed. And let's make a change to this as well. That's done, and we'll go ahead and save that. Right. So now, when we go back into Postman, into Pipedream rather, we can see any second now that will appear in our most recent events. The time now is local time is 12:37. We can see we've done some previously, but that will appear as a new line entry, a new entry there for around 12:37. This is one of those moments when I said that it'll be nice and awkward. We'll have to just carry on talking until it appears. And obviously, if it doesn't appear, then I will get very frantic and very nervous. But when it does appear, it'll be a great relief. So let's just wait for that to appear. Of course, feel free to ask any questions you might have in the chat box, and we'll take them at the end of the session. So let's just wait for that to appear any second now. That should appear. And there it goes, that comes through there. For some reason there are 2 events. Okay, let's have a look at this one and see. This is the change event. So let's have a look at the body in this one. And we can see straight away there's information here of interest. We have the environment ID, which tells us this is made by us. So obviously, if your application is managing lots of different environments, it'd be useful to know who exactly is making the change. It gives us the time the change was made, and this is obviously my local time in the UK. It tells us also what was changed. So this is the address change on the constituent record. But perhaps most interestingly is the data branch here. We can see the constituent ID, that's the system ID, and the address ID. It also tells us who last made the change and who added the record. So what it doesn't do though, it doesn't tell us exactly the fact that the address lines were changed or the zip code was changed. And that's for security reasons. We don't really want that kind of information being sent down the wire without specific authentication. Obviously, sending down IDs is not much of a security risk, but sending down specific data could be. But now that we have our IDs, we can look up that data. And we're going to go ahead and make a copy of this constituent ID or the system ID and go back to Postman. And we can look up that constituent. Let's just paste that into there. So we can see this is Abigail, and we can see the address that we made a change to. We made it very obvious by changing the number to 909 and the zip code to 48999. So this is very clearly the address we made a change to. But obviously we could have made a change to the other address that was there, and that wouldn't have shown up because it's not the preferred address. So we want to make sure that we have that, definitely have that address. Let's just go back to Pipedream and pick out that ID there, which is the address ID. And we can do the same thing, we can look up the address. So let's add that to our endpoint. And this is looking at the constituent API, all the addresses and the specific ID at the end there. So if we retrieve that, yes, we can see that that's our address that was changed. Now, of course, this doesn't show you, it just shows you what the current values are. And Auto Cloud, the product we developed, does track all the values as they change. Use the webhooks to track the changes, and it makes changes. It tracks the change of the before value and the after value, so we can definitely see that change. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. One thing I just wanted to add, there's one other step we could do. We also have information about, if we go back to Pipedream, also have information about who added the record and when it was last changed, or who was changed by it rather. So in this case, it's 56. So we can check that out as well. Who made the change? So if we plug that into our endpoint, and just a word of warning here: this API, the NXT Data Integration API, is only available to environment admins. So if you're getting an error when you try to run this, it could be that you're not an environment admin and you don't have rights to use this API. Okay, so let's try and let's send this now, and we shall see that yes, user ID 56 is indeed me, and we can see that that information come back as well. So we have a lot of information. We can retrieve information about the webhook as well. So we know the current values and the name of the person who made the change. Let's have a quick look in Auto Cloud. Obviously, we are subscribing to all of those endpoints. So we have a look here. So if we now this is Auto Cloud, we can just do a refresh of the latest changes. And we can see, let's have a quick look now. If we scroll down here, we can see, here we go. This is the change to the zip code and the change to the address. We can see here the zip code was 4820 and it's now 4899. And again, it was 8 Banksia Court and 99 Banksia Court. So clearly we can see, and also we can see the changes made by myself here. So we can clearly see that webhooks have a really useful role to play in tracking changes, but any kind of process where we are looking for real-time change of data. There's one other thing I want to take a look at before we end this session. There is also a marketplace application that Blackbaud have released called the webhook monitor. So we go back to our home page, we can see that. I've already installed that here, we can see that here, but you'll need to just install it through the marketplace. And this tells us, firstly it tells us all the different webhooks that are available to us. So for each of the record types, there's three types of changes that can be monitored. So when records are added, changed, or deleted, and whether it's a constituent record, and a constituent address, email, online presence, phone, solicit code, or if a gift has been added, or rather gift change, prospect as well. So I've gone ahead and subscribed or provisioned the solicit code one in advance just to make things a bit quicker. And we can go back to our record for Abigail, and let's go ahead and add that solicit code. So she currently has no solicit codes, so we're going to go ahead and add that solicit code. Let's add the do not email one with today's date, and save that. So now we can go back to the webhook monitor, and we can have, and I'll come to a moment or two whilst we wait for that to come through. I'm going to open up the webhook monitor here. You'll see a few that I've done previously, and while we wait for that to come through, I'll just refresh my math. Nothing like wasting a bit of time trying to get this to feel as though it's a bit quicker. Alright, I shall refresh this and see if it's appearing. As I said, it does take a minute or two just to arrive. Carry on adding questions to the chat, and we'll take them when we have a moment to the end of the session. Yep, still waiting. I have to just tell myself there's nothing uncomfortable about this process of waiting, because every time I wait, it eventually comes. It's just that moment of anticipation for it arriving is never fun. If you're watching this on catch up, just feel free to move the dial along a bit so that it arrives a bit quicker. And if you're watching this live, just bear with me. It'll be there in a minute. So we are waiting for it to around 12:46 local time. Should be here in a minute. There we go, 12:45. Great, it's arrived. Phew. Okay, let's have a quick look. This looks very similar to what we saw in Postman. Major difference is there's no under the data branch. There is no. We don't know who last changed the record, or who first added the record. That's unfortunate for solicit codes and a few other items that don't tell us that. That currently, I believe, the main constituent record, address, and gifts have that information, but the other records do not. But nevertheless, we can still look into what the data is. So we can, we can make a copy of that constituent ID. Go back to Postman. Remember, 175 is our ID for the solicit code. Let's look that up. And in this case, we don't look up a specific solicit code. We look up all solicit codes for a constituent record. So let's just send that off. And yes, 175, we can see that it's our do not email and the start date from today. So as you can see, we've seen in this how we can make use of different webhooks, and we can use them in different applications. This particular example, we could send this off then to email marketing application and process it that way. We could ask to be unsubscribe this record, so they no longer receive emails. Or we could do something else with it. With the addresses, we could possibly integrate with an education system, or well, whatever you want to do with the real-time data changes, you can do. All right, I'm going to take any questions there. If there's anything, then we'll have a look on the chat. Otherwise, please do feel free to get in contact with me, and if you have any questions, hopefully I can be of help. But for now, thank you very much for listening.